Welcome back to our PCT Short. I'm Jonah Johnson. So we're getting a lot of questions now. So we talked about wheat at the beginning of the week. Now we're talking about corn and soybeans. So on your screen, you'll see the same temperatures that we had across Friday night, Saturday night, and some of Sunday night of this previous week in the beginning of May. And so those temperatures obviously could affect our corn and soybeans. So I'll briefly talk about corn. So as you're all well aware, if it did leaf out or germinate underground, then it couldn't find its way up or ran out of energy, or for some reason your soils got capped off and it couldn't penetrate and push through, those corn plants aren't going to make it, and we'll have to dig and do some stand counts and figure out whether or not replant is necessary. Now, if your plants are emerged above the ground and they turn brown and laid over and you can't see them, you need to give it 5 to 6 days. We'll get some GDU, some heat accumulation, and 9 times out of 10, those corn plants will grow out of it and you won't know a difference in a week or so next week by this time. What I want to spend a little bit more time on is our soybeans. So soybeans seem to be a little bit more tolerant than corn when it may absorb some cold water. So if it was seed you had planted and it absorbed cold water, a lot of times it doesn't phase those beans. It just may take them a lot longer to get out of the soil because we just don't have the GDU accumulation of about 130 to 150 GDUs for soybean emergence. Now, the beans that could have had a problem is ones that are emerged and sat cold in that 2 hours at 28 degrees or less. So that's a killing for live plants above the ground. A little different from our wheat scenario we had earlier in the week. So when we're looking at your soybeans, we need to look at those where the cotyledons fold over, and if we're finding an apical meristem, that's the newest growth because the growing point's above the ground the minute it gets above the ground. So as long as we see some regrowth happening, those beans most likely will be okay. Some caveats to that, what we're seeing is some major differences with number one from different soybean varieties, different planting dates. Interesting enough, tilled ground versus no-till ground. So in no-till ground, we're seeing where soybeans sat there in that heavy residue, and we think there's some microclimates going on down there that made that sit wetter, colder, longer, and so those beans were harmed into a higher degree versus tilled soil, where typically accepts radiation from the daylight even if the sun is not officially out and stays just a little bit warmer, and the beans in those scenarios did a lot better. Now, one step further, if you're a cover crop person, where we've seen beans in the last several years, those scenarios were worse than the nth degree. So where you had different levels of residue on the soil, a lot of beans in cover crops, they died from frost because it stayed even colder in that residue. Where we did not have cover crop residue, it was a totally different story with our soybeans. So major thing we need to do right now is do stand counts, scout your field to see what your stands are. There's still a lot of time. If you had the replant and we had some good weather, a lot of times germination is much better and more successful once we have constant heat and not battling these severe up and downs in temperatures. So stick with us, and we'll keep addressing these cold injury as we evaluate. So for more, follow us on X and PCTnutrients.com. I'm Jonah Johnson. Thanks for watching.